Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. Before I tell you about this learning video, I will introduce myself. My name is Arun Nurasida. My ID number is 183200043. I study at the Islamic University of Maulana Malik Ibrahim Malang. And I made this learning video as a form of an online field job training assignment. How are you guys? I hope you are still in good condition. And you need to remember, don't go anywhere. Just stay at home and do your daily activities. Okay? It is necessary to leave the house. Don't forget to comply with health protocols by always using a double mask, keeping your distance, and washing your hands. And if you can, always carry a hand sanitizer with you. So, in this video lesson, I will explain the 10th grade subject in the first chapter of senior high school. It's about talk about self. Before we start the discussion of this chapter, let's pray together. Okay, pray together, begin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Raditu billahi rabba wa bil islami dina wa bi muhammadin nabiyyan wa rasula. Rabbi zidni ilma warzuqni fahma. Amin. Okay, let's continue to the next slide. It's about the purpose of learning this material. The purpose of learning this material is the students can introduce themselves in English to the teacher and also their friends. The second purpose, the students have confidence in carrying out self-introduction activities to others. And the third purpose, the students are expected to be able to identify the social function, the structure, and linguistic elements of the text related to identity. And then, the student can respond to the meaning of the text about self-introduction, orally and in writing. And the last, the students be able to compose simple oral and written text related to self-introduction. Okay, for the third slide, we are going to talking about the definition of talking about self. Then, the purpose of talking about self, and the last, when talking about self is usually done. Okay, in this PowerPoint is written, the definition is talking about self in Indonesian means memperkenalkan diri kita to other people. So, when we provide the information about ourselves to others, that the other people can know about our identity. Then, the activity is called talking about self. After that, when we tell about the events in our lives without mentioning our identity, can be called talking about self? Of course, the answer is no. Because the most important thing in talking about self is about the identity that we have. You need to remember it. The most important thing in talking about self is about the identity that we have. Okay, we are going to move on the next point. It's about the purpose of talking about self. The purpose of talking about self is to make other people can get to know us better. Then we get acquainted with distant friends we have never met. From this goal, do you also think what are the benefits? Well, I will tell you the benefits. The first is that we can have more friends or acquaintances. That way we can get information about anything easily. Okay, for the next point, it's about when is talking about self. Now, talking about self is usually done when we are in a new environment. And there, we will need friends. And how to get new friends? Of course, by getting acquainted. Now here, talking about self is done. For the example is when we become a new student at one of the schools we have just entered, or when we just moved from house, we just recognized the neighbors around the house. So, when we hold a Thanksgiving event and invite our neighbors, there we need to talk about ourselves. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. In the first slide, I will give you know about the elements of language used in talking about self. Because before we study talking about self, it will be nice if we know about it. In the first column contains the subject. And then, what is the subject called? Who knows? Yeah, the subject is the person who performs the activity in a sentence, or the object being discussed in a sentence. What is in the subject column? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7, yes. The first is I, you, they, we, she, he, and the last it. You must already know what it means. For those who forgot, I will remind you in Indonesia, which means like I in Indonesian is saya, you, kamu, they, mereka, we, kita, she, dia for the girl, he, dia for the boy, and it, usually used for thing. And then in the second column, there is an objective. Do you still remember what is the meaning of objective? So the notion of objective is a person or thing in a sentence that is given a job or any noun that is discussed on the subject. Then in the objective column, there is anything like, for the example, I in this PowerPoint become my. And then in the third column, there is a possessive adjective. If this possessive adjective is possession. Like if we want to say, this is your book. Oh yeah, that is my book. That is my bottle. That possession is used in those kinds of sentences. So you cannot use I when you want to say ownership of sentences. I to replace it. You have to replace I with my. And in the next column, there is a possessive pronoun. What are possessive pronouns? Possessive pronouns are one type of pronoun that is very often used in sentences. The difference between a possessive pronoun and a possessive adjective lies in the form of the pronoun used. and also in its function. Judging from its function, possessive pronouns are used in sentences to replace noun, in the sense that the noun in question does not exist or is not mentioned anymore, while the possessive adjective is located before the noun and its function is to explain who the noun belongs to. And for the example of a an example of a sentence that uses a possessive pronoun is that is mine, this is his. So the thing in question is not mentioned, but other people can understand what is said to be mine and his. I'm sure you have seen this fourth slide when you were studying in junior high school. And I only remind you if you forget about this material because it plays a very important role when you practice talking about yourself to others. Okay, we are going to the fifth slide. Well, here we will discuss the existing structure and talking about self. The first is the opening. What is called the opening in talking about self? The opening in question is the sentence used by the actor before he or she introduces himself or herself to other people. Like, in this occasion, I will introduce myself. Okay, please allow me to introduce myself. Or just say hi, hello. Some of these words and sentences include the opening used when talking about self. And then the second structure is content. What is meant by content in this material? The meaning of content is what you will talk about or what you will convey to other people, so the other people can get to know you better. For the example, after the opening with one of several sentences and words that have been written, I explained earlier, you continued by mentioning your name, your age, your home address, where you were born, when were you born, what are your hobbies, and how many relatives do you have. Well, some of these things are called content in talking about self. And then the third structure is closing. So here are the closing sentences or words that are usually used in self-introduction. Like, first of all, thank you for allowing me to introduce myself, or just say thank you or bye, and a few other sentences that show closing sentences in each self-introduction. Now, from the self-introduction structure that I have explained, do you already have an idea how you should introduce yourself using English? To make better your understanding, we are continue to the next slide. Here are some things that are used as material for self-introduction. Or in the previous slide, which I explained in the second structure, namely the content structure. There is like your name, your age, your address, your job or your status at now, what are your hobbies, and also your family. Some of these things are enough to make others understand your identity. Okay, for the next slide, in this slide we will talk about how we introduce ourselves using English. The following sentences are used to introduce ourselves to others. The first is about the name, like my name is, and then you can call me The third is I am blah 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 years old. And then I was born in, I was born on, I am originally from, I now live in, I am a, and the last, you can say it about your hobby with my hobby is. Thus, some of sentences above is the sentence to introduce yourselves. For the next slide is about the expression used when introducing myself or yourself. On the previous slide that I explained in the first structure is the opening structure, which is like, hi, let me introduce myself. Hello, I would like to introduce myself. And allow me to introduce myself. These words are just a few of the many opening sentences used in introducing yourself. Guys, if you find another sentence that is suitable to use, you may try using the other sentences. Did you get it? Okay, we move to the next slide. It's about the example. For the example like, hi, let me introduce myself. My name is Suci Safrida. You can call me Suci. I am 22 years old. I was born in Banyuwangi. I was born on 27 June in 1999. I am originally from Genteng. I now live in Karangrejo. I am a college student. My hobby is watching movie. I have 2 brothers. Thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. Yeah, here is an example that already contains a clear identity. Try to pay attention to the sentence, I was born in. If you use in, then you indicate your place of birth. If you use on, you have to indicate when you were born. Okay? Regarding the time it means. Originally mean as long as you live in the past. And now, try from the example on the slide, you determine which sentence is become the opening of structure, which sentence shows the content structure, and the last, which sentence shows the closing structure. I have already explained this on the previous slide, and on this slide I hope you can determine the structure of the self-introduction example that I have given. Did you get the answer, guys? Okay, it's great for those of you who can determine the structure of the examples on this slide. For those of you who are still confused, I remind you again by helping to answer the sentence. Hi, that includes the opening structure. Then, from the my name sentence to the sentence that talks about brothers, including the content structure, and the last sentence including the closing structure. And then, what if we want to introduce our friends or other people? It will discuss in the next slide. Okay, in this slide, we will discuss about how to introduce other people. For example, like, hi, let me introduce my friend. Like, her or his name is. You can call her or his. He or she blah 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 years old. He or she was born in. He or she was born on. He or she is originally from. He or she now live in. he or she is a, his or her hobby is, he or she has blah 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 brothers or sisters. That is an example of when you want to introduce your friend to someone else. In the second sentence, why it use his or her? Remember what I explained on the slide with several columns earlier? Yes, because we are introducing other people, the name is someone else's name, so we use his or her instead of she or he. Okay, for the next slide is about expression utilized. Like, let me introduce you to blah blah blah. I would like to introduce my friend to you, and I would like you to meet blah blah blah. That is an initial expression that we will use when we are introducing other people to our friends or vice versa. I mentioned 3 that are commonly used, but there are a few other sentences that can be used as well. Okay, for the next slide, we will discuss about the expression used when you close the conversation with someone. For the example like, see you later, goodbye, and thank you for allowing me to introduce myself. These are words and sentences that can be used as a closing. You are introducing yourself to other people, or you are introducing other people to other people you have known before. I also discussed this earlier in the discussion of the structure. If you don't understand this material, then you can ask in the comments column. Well, I also want to know how far you understand my explanation, so I will give you practice in the next slide. Okay guys, this is an exercise for you, and it is collected next week during my lesson. Keep the spirit of learning, even though the situation does not allow you to meet directly with me in the class, but you have to keep studying hard so that you can understand the next material easily, and when there is a daily test, you can get good grades. From my explanations that I can convey, if there are shortcomings and mistakes in the delivery of material, please forgive me. Thank you, and Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.